How's it going, everyone? Welcome to SCC again. So another little life hack video. So this is going to be the engine mount for the 4-stroke 49cc engine. So in a perfect world, when this is all stretched out, you have pretty easy access to the bolts here and also the holes through the engine mount. So in a perfect scenario, you could mount this to the frame, you'd have access from underneath to mount the engine, and you'd have fairly easy access to try and fit a wrench in here to be able to hold these in place while you tighten the nuts down and secure it to the frame. However, we're not always in a perfect world. So what about when you don't have as much room to mount it to the frame? What about when it's squeezed in and you don't have room to get a wrench in here and tighten it down? Now, I've been here quite a few times and I've had to try and take straight edge screwdrivers or nail sets or something like that and try and pry it in there to try and hold that bolt head down while I tighten the outside nut onto the frame. Never works. You never get it as tight as you want to get it. And then also when you have it closer like this, I don't know if you can see it or not, but underneath, I'll flip it over here. So underneath it's blocking the holes for to mount the engine to, which means you have to mount the engine to this first and then try and balance the mount with the engine on it and attach it to your frame. Now, my main thing is right now is what do I do when these heads of the bolt are not accessible by a wrench? Obviously, sticking a screwdriver or a nail set or something like that in there is really not a good option, and it's not going to allow you to tighten it down the way it should be tightened down. So what I came up with a little hack for eliminating the worry about holding these in place. So let's get right into it. Okay, so this is a breakdown of the engine mount. It's not quite entirely in view here, but you got the most of it here. So your main pieces that came with here that go under the plate, this is where the big bolts go through and mount to the frame. Now, as you can see in this piece here, you already got some rust and everything going on, so we're going to do the same treatment here in preparation for this hack as what I did to paint the main plate. Okay, so we're going to bring our sanding block back that we used for the main plate, and we're going to just get into all the cracks and crevices and do the same thing. Our main goal is to try and get this all the rust and loose particles off of this plate and try and clean it up again. Okay, so I got it all scuffed up all the way around. I got that rust and everything off that was on there in the beginning. I wasn't going to paint this originally. I was only going to paint the plate, the original mounting plate, since this was already black. However, after seeing that rust here, I am going to throw a coat of paint on here to match. That way it's, number one, going to match, and number two, it's not going to rust. So being outside, it's naturally going to rust. I don't want that rust running down if it gets wet and then starting to stain the other stuff. So I'm just going to paint it, that way it's consistent and you're not going to get any of that rust. So now that's sanded down, I'm going to bring the tack cloth back again. I'm going to wipe everything down, make sure you do, again, really good job getting all that dust and particles out from all the cracks and seams and everything. And then once this is done, we'll move on to the next step. And like I was mentioning in the last video, so try not to touch anything with your fingers. So kind of start over here on with the tack cloth, and then move your way over here, and then just kind of put it down. That way you don't have any of your oils from your skin on it. Okay, so the first step is, once you get everything cleaned up, is to set the bolts in there and make sure we get them set up to where they're going to be in a good position, because once we lock them into place, that's where they're going to stay. So you're going to put the bolts through there, just like this, and then you're going to take the washer, put the washer on there, and then you're going to put a nut on each side. Once you have everything set and straight as far as the bolt heads with the top of the bracket, then you're going to tighten these down and make any last adjustments on the top here to make sure they're straight. Okay, so once you have the bolts through there, you have the washer and the nuts on there, you're going to make sure that the flat part of the bolt on top is lined up with the flat part of the bracket here. So you don't want one of the ridges on the bolts sticking up like this. So make sure it's parallel and even with the top here. Then we're going to take another set of nuts and we're going to screw them on just enough here. And then we're going to take this bracket and just set it over. This isn't going to be doing anything, this is only temporary. This is basically just making sure that these bolts are lined up before we lock them into place. Because if these bolts are at a different angle, we want to make sure before we seal everything up that we can get this bracket on when it's time to put it onto the frame of the bike. So this goes on smooth, there's no binding or anything like this, so this is good. So now that these are tightened down, now we can get to the final step of the process. Alright, so what I'm using here, it's putty. That's actually, once it hardens, it's what they claim as hard as steel. It's sandable, it's paintable, it's a very wicked putty. All you do, it's basically two colors, so it's gray on the outside, usually black on the center. You cut off what you need, and then you knead it together in your hands until everything is mixed up consistently. And then you have just under 5 minutes to place it where you need to be, and then you just let it dry, and like I said, it's just like steel. I've used this stuff before. A long time ago I had a hole in my exhaust on a motorcycle. I was able to plug that hole, sand it, paint it, and it held up for thousands of miles on the high temperatures. So should work good for this. So basically what you'll do is you'll just, since in this application we have 4 bolts, we're going to cut it off in quarters. Take this little seal on the end, put that back over, and then we'll put it back in the tube here so it doesn't dry out. And we'll basically take the wrapping off here. And then, like I said, it's gray on the outside, black on the center. Just like a epoxy glue, once you mix the two components together, then it activates. So same thing here, we're just going to knead it together for a couple minutes and then it'll be ready to apply. Okay, so once you knead it and get everything mixed together, then basically all you're doing is you're putting a heavy coat around that bolt. The set time on this is about 5 minutes, fully cures in 1 hour. So in about 1 hour this is going to be fully set. It's a pretty thick coat, so I'm actually going to I'm just going to let it sit overnight before I do anything with it to make sure that since it's so thick, it can cure all the way through. Anytime you have really thick layers like this, whether it's epoxy or concrete or anything else, it's going to take a little bit longer to cure. So we'll let it sit overnight. By tomorrow morning at the latest, it should be fully cured, and then we can take the nuts off and this bolt shouldn't move. So be really, really sure to get this putty pressed in on all the areas around here. So when you're pushing it in, make sure to push it in under so there's no gaps or anything around this bolt, because the whole point of this is when you're torquing this bolt down, nothing in here is going to move. So you don't want any gaps or anything in there to where it's going to have any play at all and be able to work itself out or round the edges off or anything like that. So make sure you really press it in there and there's no gaps around this bolt. So I'll keep on doing this. I'll do this one, then the 2 bolts on the other one, and we'll let this sit overnight and should be good to go. And then after that, like I said, it is sandable, it is paintable. Try and get a good a view as possible here. Make sure that your putty isn't humped up higher than the bracket or the bolt head here. Because remember that mounting plate goes over here, so you don't want anything humped up to where it's going to mess up that mounting bracket and make it sit up higher. Then you're going to throw your alignment off on the bolts and everything here. So we'll do the other ones, let it dry, and then it'll be ready to sand and put a coat of paint on, and we'll be good to go. This is one less worry we have. So when I'm mounting it on the bike, I don't have to worry about getting a wrench in here holding that bolt. I'll just be able to tighten the bolts down and be set. Okay, I got them all done. Didn't take long at all, under 10 minutes to mix that putty up, place it on there. One thing I will definitely recommend is don't be a dumbass like me and do it with bare hands. Invest in some rubber gloves and put gloves on, because you're going to spend way too much of your life trying to wash that shit off. Between the tack cloth, the residue, and the putty, after doing 4 of these bolts, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to scrub that stuff off, and it still doesn't come off. So get some gloves. Okay, we're maybe, I don't know, 12 to 15 minutes after we did the first one here. And I can take a knife here and barely scratch the surface. So it's already really hard. So by the time we get overnight here, it'll definitely be fully cured and no more worries. Okay everyone, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching all the videos that I do post. Thanks again for all the comments and support. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it. So if you do have any questions on this video or any other videos, then please email me direct at sinistercustomcycles@gmail.com, or to keep up with smaller updates or message me, check out the SCC Facebook page at facebook.com/SCCMN. Next week we're going to be doing the engine install. You're going to see that little life hack you just watched in action and see how much easier it makes the install. And I'll show you every detail on what to look out for and how to do the install the correct way. So stay tuned. Thanks again. Have an awesome Turkey Day, and we'll see you next time.